All right, YouTube, it sticks fresh out of the shower time to talk about the upcoming New Hampshire debate, GOP debate. The Democratic debate was just Hillary and Bernie yelling at each other for a couple hours, so I didn't even watch it, basically. I saw a few clips from it, thought they were kind of amusing, but said, well, at this point, there's only two Democrats left in the race. It's boring. There's no reason really to watch it. I think Sanders is the better candidate from the perspective of who is more likely to actually tell the truth once in a while. Hillary is just a shrill gorgon of a candidate. She's backed by the same people backing Ted Cruz. I don't understand why the Democrats and Republicans don't actually realize this. People still think Hillary's more electable than Sanders. She's not. She'd get absolutely dominated in a general election, even if her opponent was fucking Rick Santorum. And you can take that to the bank as being true. As for the Republican debate, I think here's what you can expect to witness. Right now, Rubio has surged in New Hampshire, not so much nationally, oddly enough, but in New Hampshire. But there's a caveat to this. If you look at just the last two polls from yesterday as opposed to the slew that came right after Iowa, it looks like a very short-term temporary bounce because he appears to have declined 5 to 10 points in a single day. If this is the case, what we could be witnessing is a Fiorina moment from Marco Rubio. You'll remember, of course, Carly Fiorina at the underdog debate long ago. Jumped up, I think, almost 15 points over the course of a single week of polling. She stayed at that peak for a few days and then immediately began to decline because people realized it was a flash in the pan. She had impressed people. She was in the news cycle, and a lot of people said, yeah, I'll support Fiorina when asked. Then they realized her actual views. See, when they were first polled, they didn't realize what her views were because they had, in many cases, never heard of her before. They just saw her debate performance, a clip from it, or the debate itself. And they said, well, Fiorina's my candidate. She seems like a strong, honest, hardworking individual. Then they realized who she really was in subsequent debates, in news, and so forth. They studied Carly Fiorina. They realized, no, she's actually not all that. And she declined back to the deepest regions of the lower tier. I believe she's in last place right now. Deservedly. What I also think you're going to see at the debate is this. That has something to do with it. Rubio possibly being on the decline could figure into what actually gets said there. Trump could look at Rubio, say, well, I don't believe that this is a real jump, and sort of ignore him and do his usual stuff where he primarily he goes for the low-hanging fruit. He'll attack Jeb or Christie or something like that. Probably not Carson, because he and Carson now appear to be kind of buddying. I wouldn't be surprised if after New Hampshire, when Carson comes in 7th or 8th place, probably drop out. Will he endorse Trump? Maybe, maybe not. I can't think of any other I mean, he can't endorse Ted Cruz because Cruz screwed Ben Carson, so that's not going to happen. It's not going to be an insider like Marco Rubio or Kasich. And most of the other, I mean, Jeb might be out after New Hampshire, honestly. I mean, depending on how he does at this debate, this might be his last stand of existence. And even if he dominated the debate, he'd still probably wouldn't place in the top 3. I think what you're going to see are Kasich and Jeb are going to be battling it out for that 4th place finish. Possibly 3rd, depending on what happens with Cruz. Cruz did not get a bump from Iowa, nationwide or New Hampshire. In fact, he's declining right now. He hasn't seen a single new point of support in the aggregate or in any single poll. I think Cruz, I correctly predicted, is in the Santorum corner. That is, that was a one-off. He's not going to perform well in New Hampshire. People of New Hampshire just don't have the same kind of evangelical leanings that the Iowans did. Whether or not Trump wins is a different story, but as for Cruz, I expect him to take 3rd, maybe 4th. Depending on what happens, Jeb could beat up on Rubio, and if he does that successfully, he could end up supplanting Cruz, knocking him down to 4th. Kasich could do the same and knock him down to 5th place, which would end Cruz's campaign most likely. His last stand would be South Carolina. He's still, way behind there as well. As for Rubio, it's his night to lose. Whether the bump is permanent or not really doesn't make any difference. Rubio's best shot is to perform well enough at this debate and in New Hampshire in general to continue going and have a striking chance of finishing first or second in South Carolina and Nevada. If he does poorly, or if this bump is temporary, as I think it might be, he may not be able to do that. He may take third, he might take fourth, and really, at that point, Trump has come out on top as I expected to begin with. I think that Trump is going to be gunning for Rubio anyway, though. He might spend a little time, again, attacking Jeb. He'll probably go after Chris Christie, who's already declining, but, you know, it's really easy to score good points against him. As for Cruz, I expect that Trump, other than perhaps in his opening statement when he makes an offhanded remark probably about, you know, rigging the election or something, and talking about how Ted Cruz is really an establishment candidate. Other than that, he'll probably ignore Ted Cruz. He'll rely upon people like Jeb who want to take fourth to attack Cruz to bring him down. People like Carson. Carson is epically upset at Ted Cruz. This is sort of his last chance to really air his grievances because he'll probably leave. His campaign will probably be suspended after New Hampshire when he takes last or second to last place. Another thing that you're going to see, I think, in New Hampshire, I think you'll find that Rand Paul's supporters are a little bit more hardened than a lot of people gave him credit for. I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to come in ahead of Fiorina and Carson in a race where he has suspended his campaign. That could happen, in which case he'll go on the news and he'll probably chuckle about that and say, oh, well, I guess people like Liberty more than we gave him credit for. Really, though, the top three, it does come down to Trump and Rubio, obviously, and then it's very difficult to determine who else will be in that top three. Kasich has been up and down. He has managed, it seems, to defeat Jeb within New Hampshire, which I like. I'm no Kasich fan, but he has managed to screw Jeb just like he got screwed in Iowa, so, you know, take it if you can get it. As for Ted Cruz, because he didn't actually get a bounce and because his numbers are so similar to Kasich's and even to some extent to Jeb Bush's numbers, it's very difficult to tell which of these three candidates is going to get one of those slots. You could see Rubio get epically ass-blasted at the debate, and Trump, by the way, I assume is going to show up for this debate. I assume that he's going to do that. He's got a lot more support in New Hampshire than he had in Iowa. His numbers have... in Iowa, a few weeks before the voting, Cruz was in the lead. The only reason why I and others predicted Trump would win is because Ted Cruz had declined towards the end. Obviously, a lot of people retained him as a second-choice candidate. But are Cruz supporters able to supplant a 15-point lead? Probably not. What we saw was, you know, an increase of 3 or 4% in the voting in Iowa, and that's what gave him the first-place win. Trump's voting share came in a little bit below expected. Cruz's was somewhat above, and that's why he won Iowa. As to whether it's possible for that to happen in New Hampshire, I think you would certainly have to consider a rigged election at that point if that were to happen. Regardless of the movement in the polls in the next few days after this debate, unless Trump absolutely makes a joke of himself. And I don't mean says something, you know, that seems mean or bigoted, or he says shit up on a live debate stage. You know, he said bullshit before, and all Bill O'Reilly could do is contain himself from fucking breaking down in tears. Oh, think of the children. Who gives a fuck about that stuff? But unless Trump were to completely collapse in this debate, I think largely we know he's unlikely to do that. I don't think that a 15-point lead could be supplanted by anyone except possibly Rubio, and that relies upon him continuing to rise. Rubio said before, well, we're talking about a 3-2-1 thing, you know, coming in third in Iowa. That's what he was aiming for, then second New Hampshire, first in South Carolina. That would make sense, except that I'm not sure he can supplant Trump's lead in South Carolina either, because Trump's been leading there by, I think, 10, 12 points consistently for some time. Rubio could, also, as I said, simply be showing a very short-term spike in his support. He could collapse and come in fourth or something, which would not be good for his chances going forward. I think Kasich is in the best position to outperform, but again, because he doesn't have a lot of national support, some of Kasich's supporters might pull Jeb in Iowa. Essentially, they might act like they did, where half of Jeb's supporters either switched to some other candidate or didn't show up, and abandon Kasich and dooming his campaign. Then again, he could have more support on the ground there than I'm estimating, and he could come in, second place for all we know. But he has consistently been in the top tier, actually, in New Hampshire. It's quite funny. He's banking on this one state. This doesn't generally work. I can't think of any candidate who has successfully pulled this off and gotten nominated, although certainly somebody like Huckabee capitalized upon a few wins at the time, 2008. Where he lost out to McCain. He won Iowa, he won a few other states, and then went on to a successful multi-million-dollar TV contract. This may be what Kasich actually wants. He may not be hedging on actually winning the nomination. He might want what many other candidates want. They want the recognition with their name so that they can do ads, they can have a TV show, a radio circuit, or something like that. Huckabee, I'm surprised he didn't form a rock band because he plays guitar and stuff. You would think of like Bubba Bill with his saxophone or something, like, is this going to be his second job or something like that? But no, I think Trump and Rubio and Cruz will be the top three most likely. Cruz, though, is by no means assured of this. And I think it rubbed people the wrong way. What happened in Iowa, especially with going after Carson, I think the problem for Cruz and why he didn't experience any substantial increase in his support isn't that people weren't astonished that he pulled off a win there. It's because of the nature of the win. Things went sour for him because almost immediately after he wins the state, it comes out, he was, telling people that showed up for Carson to vote for Cruz, telling his staffers were telling people, oh, well, vote for real conservative. Carson's out now. He suspended his campaign, which wasn't true. The mailers became a problem. This may also be one of the problems with Rubio. If indeed he is already declining, it could have something to do with the fact that his placement in Iowa looks more suspicious when you consider Microsoft's donations to his campaign, when you consider his very similar mailers, when you consider the fact that he appears to have a very prepackaged, non-spontaneous message to offer people. New Hampshire voters, being a bit more libertarian, a bit more independent than the national average, and much softer in their support of something like evangelism, are not by any means guaranteed to vote for Ted Cruz at the rate that they're polling for him, or indeed for Marco Rubio. I think what you could see is that actually some of these people last minute switched to Trump, primarily because they have a penchant for not liking the establishment. Now, they aim this at the Democrats, they aim it at the Republicans. But in the debate, it's almost certain Rubio is going to be the punching bag of the night. Trump, though, may choose to largely ignore him and go after somebody like Jeb. But Jeb, I will say this, I expect Jeb to drop out after New Hampshire, because I can't imagine a scenario in which he performs better than fourth place, and I think fifth is closer to what he's probably going to get. He might even underperform and take sixth. This kills the Jeb. For not only an establishment candidate, but one that is very visibly backed by corporations and big banks, sort of a Hillary Clinton for the Republican Party, sort of like Rubio, only without Rubio's youth and well-spoken can-do attitude. That's basically what Jeb is. He's the more awkward, older Bush version of Marco Rubio. Their views are basically the fucking same. But, who's going to appeal to the youth? The dude in his 40s who's like kind of a Cuban Hispanic. He's obviously more well-spoken. His verbal skills are more top-notch. Not necessarily great, but they're certainly better than Jeb Bush's. Or the older dude that's got the Bush family name. Clearly not the latter. He's clearly not appealing to voters as much. Jeb, he'll probably get attacked. The funny thing is, because it may be the last time he's on the debate stage, Jeb will probably go all out in attacking other candidates. He's going to seek to use fear, most likely. He'll try to convince people that a vote for Trump is a vote for insecurity in some way. He doesn't know what he's doing. He'll lead us over the precipice. And Rubio's too young and too restrained, perhaps. And Cruz, well, he wants this war and that war, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And he'll probably go after Christie, too. Christie remains a competitor. Although it's funny, Chris Christie has continuously declined for almost a month now, despite the fact that at a time he was sort of like the Kasich of the race in New Hampshire. Now it's Kasich. People appear to have abandoned Christie in favor of Kasich. I guess because Christie is a fat gas bag of a candidate. Nobody can really stand him. He gets snappy with reporters. He gets snappy with people asking questions. He acts like a fucking authoritarian. Whereas Kasich seems more like almost a Bush-style goofball in a way. He's not particularly well-spoken. He tends to mumble through things and murmur a bit and stammer a bit. But he seems more personable than somebody like Christie. Christie's not the sort of person that you want to hang around with unless you're using his free food, card from the people of New Jersey to scarf down $10 hot dogs at a baseball game or something. If you're with Christie when he's at a sports game, you can get free beer, you can get free hot dogs, you can get free pizza and popcorn and anything else that you happen to want. I mean, he's going to eat 10 times more than you ever can, but, you'll get some freebies from him. Otherwise, it's probably Kasich. Like, Kasich seems like the sort of person who, his breakfast involves the scrambled eggs and the waffles, and then he cracks a couple of corny jokes while talking about Jesus a little bit. Chris Christie's the kind of dude, he's not good conversation because he's fucking stuffing his mouth and his fucking ass at the same time. Jeb's the sort of person who he just cracks jokes and they're so awkward. You don't know what he's talking about, but you don't want him to feel bad, so you laugh anyway. Rubio's all business all the time. He's got the car salesman approach. And Trump, if you went to breakfast with him, he'd probably buy the restaurant if it was any good. You'd say, oh, well, I can make $1 million off this place. I think Trump is much... If I thought that there was a fairly good chance Trump would win Iowa, and I did, Cruz, partially won it through methods which are not entirely honest. Even a lot of people that don't like Trump, they don't like Rubio, they're saying the same thing. He pissed off Carson supporters. Carson's an evangelical. So it's not just a bunch of independents and college kids that are going for somebody like Trump that got pissed off at Ted Cruz. Cruz, I don't expect, will really rise up and be much of a threat. So basically what's left is Rubio. Rubio is still the true establishment front-ranked candidate. Cruz is establishment light. Trump's the outsider self-funding. I'm still sad that Rand dropped out, but he might come in like 5th or 6th place in a race where he no longer has an official presence. That'd be funny. I want to see, just for the sake of laughs, here's what I want. I want Jeb to get knocked out by Kasich and fall to 5th, and then I want Rand to outperform in a race he's not even in and bump Jeb down to 6th so that Jeb retires in shame. Oh, it'd be the revenge of Rand upon the establishment knocking out a Bush would give him infinite delight. Oh, he'd be laughing all night. He'll probably go on the news and he won't be able to keep a straight face. I want to see that. That's what I really want to see. I don't give a fuck who wins the New Hampshire primary. I just want to see Rand do well without actually being in the race. I want to see him, again, knock Jeb down like he did in Iowa. I think that'd be so poetic and so funny that a candidate, the true outside candidate, Trump is, he's got sort of insider views on some things. Yeah, he's an outsider on immigration. He's kind of an outsider on guns. He's kind of an outsider on taxes for the GOP establishment. He is self-funded. But as far as departing more severely with the views of the mainstream GOP, it really was Rand. It's not Trump, and it's certainly not fucking Cruz. Cruz is 99% on board with everything that they want. It's Rand. And for him to, potentially drop out or suspend his campaign, still people can't seem to decide which he actually has done. It sounds to me like he's out, considering that he came in 5th and is probably going to come in no better than 5th or 6th in New Hampshire. It would be very, very, very funny to me. This would make my night if Rand manages to supplant Jeb again without being in there, because it would be a microcosm of how unpopular the establishment really is. As for Rubio, Marco Rubio's an idiot. He wouldn't know what he's doing if he gets the nomination, and he'd probably lose the election anyway. That's something I think that people in New Hampshire may be, as opposed to Iowans who are more, well, we want a candidate who's got our strong religious values. New Hampshire's more about, well, we're not looking forward to the possibility of a Hillary presidency. Who is best equipped to actually destroy her? I choose to believe it would be Trump. Some people might say Rubio, but Cruz doesn't really get in on this. Cruz gets in on the who loves Jesus the most sort of token. That's how he won Iowa. That and the fact that he screwed Ben Carson. So look for that at the debate tonight. Look for Carson to go absolutely apeshit on Ted Cruz. I don't think you're going to see a sleepy Ben Carson. I think you're going to see a very angry Ben Carson. And it may shock people. This may actually help Ben Carson to come in the top 4. He could be the surprise of New Hampshire. It could be either Rubio, his boost turns out to be short-term. He falls to 3rd again and sort of flounders in South Carolina. It could be Ted Cruz utterly collapses because he got no bounce and he's getting hammered by everyone. It could be Kasich managing to edge his way into the top 3 potentially. It could be Jeb getting supplanted by Rand who's not even in the race anymore. Or it could be Ben Carson, because he's so mad at Ted Cruz, pounds the shit out of him, ends up going up where Ted Cruz is. Cruz ends up falling down to where Carson is in the polling or something like that. So you've got a lot of possibilities. It's impossible for me to make a prediction regarding New Hampshire other than I anticipate Trump and Rubio will be in the top 3. As for who the third candidate is, wherever they happen to place in the top 3, it could be Kasich, it could be Jeb, it could be Ted Cruz, it could be Ben Carson. So you can't really predict that. I think it will be Trump, Rubio, and then somebody else. But I could be wrong. Of course, I was wrong in Iowa. But I was right about Rand and Jeb. I was right about Carson, too. So don't count me out completely just because I didn't get the winner right, because I got my other 2 predictions right on the money. As for Hillary and Bernie, what will happen in New Hampshire? I think Sanders probably has this one in the bag. He was trailing by 4 points and managed to come in tied with Hillary in Iowa, a state that, that's a flyover state. When you say socialism out there, they beat you up. In New Hampshire, which is more like college, libertarians and stuff like that, maybe a younger population, I think Bernie Sanders is going to absolutely cripple Hillary Clinton. But the problem for Sanders is, of course, people are expecting him to do that. So unless he manages to come in like 30, 40 points ahead of her, does it transfer into a long-term bump for him? Not necessarily. The best bet for Sanders going forward is to really make Hillary angry so she puts her foot in her mouth. The problem is Sanders has shown continuously, even the last debate it was half-assed, he has shown continuously an unwillingness to actually go after Hillary Clinton, to go after her in an aggressive manner. But the thing is, Hillary's always taking side swipes at him. She's also attacking everybody else who's running. She fucking attacks the media, right-wing conspiracy, vast right-wing conspiracy. She attacks everybody because it's the only way she knows how. She's a mafia candidate. She's a literal mobster candidate. She's an outdated centrist who's in bed with banks and corporations. She's getting funded by Goldman Sachs. People are noticing this. That's why she's lost support. And yet, at the end of the day, she's still maintaining this 5 to 10 point lead nationally over Sanders, largely because the Democrats are focused on short-term gain and long-term woe. And that's the problem of the GOP. The people supporting people within the GOP like Cruz and Rubio, they are showing a willingness to trade short-term gain in an election because they are viable, potentially, insider candidates, for long-term woe, because the longer that you continue to elect people who are just barely electable, they'll barely eke out a win over their opponent, and they'll face gridlocked government, the longer that you do that and you don't get an outsider to reform the party and choose to force the party into reform, the less likely it is down the road that you will continue having victories. The first party to elect an outsider, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, will probably carry the election, and it will carry the next few elections as well. It doesn't matter whether it's Trump for the GOP or Sanders for the Democrats. And if both are outsiders, if you see a Trump versus Sanders race, it's going to be the most wacky political season that you can possibly imagine. Words cannot describe how much excitement there would be. I think it would be hilarious to see them, because you wouldn't have candidates on either side that truly have the backing of most of the political establishment. Meanwhile, people like Paul Ryan or Nancy Pelosi, the insiders, the people who take the big money from the banks and corporations, would be at a loss of what to do. They wouldn't have an idea of how to actually handle the situation. They'd be trying to buy off Sanders, which I don't think will work, because Sanders has made it fairly clear he doesn't fucking want their money. They'd be trying to buy off Trump, but he's already got billions of dollars. How the fuck are you supposed to buy his votes, his vetoes or something on something that you want him to veto? It's going to be just shy of impossible. So I would love to see a Trump-Sanders race. I would really hate to see something like Rubio versus Clinton, because it'd just be 2012 all over again, or 2008 all over again. It'd be fucking boring, because these people wouldn't have any new ideas. They'd be backed by the same people that Obama and Romney or McCain or the Bush family or Bill Clinton were backed by. They're exactly the same. Sanders is the last man opposing Hillary Clinton. I wish him well. I wouldn't vote for him, but I wish him well. I think he's better than Hillary. And on the other side, I think Trump. Now that Rand is out, Trump is the best Republican candidate. He's also got the best chance of smashing the Democrats in the general election, just as Bernie. I hate to say it, folks, Hillary's running on electability. She's doing that because she knows she can't run on honesty. She knows that people don't trust her. They don't think she's honest. So she has cast herself as, I am the more reliable candidate because I don't affix socialist to my name. Sorry, folks, but your opponents and most of the independents consider Hillary a socialist anyway. In their minds, her idea about raising taxes a couple percent is socialism. So it doesn't really matter if your candidate is an avowed socialist. People just say, oh, well, at least this Democrat's honest. It's just like Trump. Yeah, we know that the Republican Party has a penchant for being corporatist and big money candidates. At least Trump is honest about it. This is what gives Trump or Sanders their strength. It's not a detriment. It's not like Romney, who was a billionaire and tried to hide it and pretend he was a normal dude, talking about how people's $10 plastic ponchos were stylish and how 47% of Americans didn't do any work or something. It's not like the Democratic candidates who rant about, we want government subsidize this, and we need to regulate that, and we need to raise taxes on this income bracket, and then decry the label socialism, because that's basically what it is. It's interventionism, it's protectionism, it has all the aspects of socialism. It just doesn't have the banner of socialism. At least Sanders and Trump are open. Sanders is open about the fact that he's a socialist. I don't like that. Many of you won't like that. At least he's willing to admit it. Trump is open about the fact that he's a plutocratic billionaire. He's not trying to mislead people. He talks openly about bilking the government, and that's specifically how he got his wealth. I would think that you would respect both of these candidates for that fact. At least they're honest about it. They don't care if you know that they're rich or socialistic or something. They wear it with pride. That's about all. Peace out.